The opinions expressed on this program are solely those of its hosts, guests, or callers, and do not necessarily represent the opinions of WTBR-FM, its management, other producers, or sponsors.
Hi, everyone. You're listening to Backstory. Let's hear it on WTBR-FM Pittsfield with Roberta McCulloch-Dews of the Mayor's Office in the city of Pittsfield. Thanks for tuning in. So today we have with us Lucie Castaldo. Am I pronouncing that right, Lucie?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me know if I'm wrong. But Lucie is a Pittsfield resident and the executive director of the Berkshire Art Center, formerly known as IS 183. The center, which has its headquarters in Stockbridge, is that correct? Yes.
Right.
Has been a Berkshire County mainstay since its founding in 1991, and most recently opened a satellite location on North Street in the city of Pittsfield. So a lot is happening for the Berkshire Art Center. A lot is happening for Lucie, and we're going to dive right in. So Lucie, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Roberta.
You're welcome.
I have to say, I love the idea of this podcast.
Oh, great.
Fact that you're recognizing people in their wholeness.
Yes.
It's just so important to community building, and I'm really grateful to be on it. So thank you.
You are very welcome. And, you know, part of this show, it really is about spotlighting individuals such as yourself who are making a difference in our community. And, sometimes we can't get to everyone, but one person at a time, right?
Right.
One story at a time. All right. So I'm just going to dive right in because, we have a lot happening with the Berkshire Art Center. But before we can even get into the Berkshire Art Center, we have to get into Lucie, the person. So Lucie, as a little girl, you grew up in Chatham, New York, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
All right. So that's right over the border. So that's right there for folks who are trying to figure out where Chatham is if you don't know where that is. Tell me a little bit about your childhood.
Well, Chatham was a beautiful place to grow up. And I have to say, too, I did spend a lot of time in Pittsfield and dance classes and all of that. But I think Chatham's, it's rural.
Okay.
It's a small town.
How many folks would you say?
Oh, God, don't even ask me. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I'm the worst. That game when you have to guess the gumballs.
Oh,
I have no idea.
Yeah.
But very small town. In my high school class, I had just a class of 100. So you knew everybody since kindergarten.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's special. I feel like because you can actually form relationships with folks that can last not only from when you're a child, but into adulthood.
Yes.
So that's pretty, and I think it harkens back to a time of community, right?
Yes.
But I also know that in addition to that small town feel, the woodsy nature of Chatham really allowed you to expand your imagination. Talk a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. I spent a lot of time playing in the woods by myself. And I think there's a couple things that had to do with my imagination and my curiosity. I think a big one is I'm an only child.
Okay.
And my parents were really, I wouldn't say concerned, but really focused on making sure I didn't grow up with the only child syndrome, stereotypical, spoiled, and all that. And they kind of employed a lot of tactics to battle that.
Okay.
And I really think, introspective, looking back on it, that a lot of that had to do with my curiosity. For example, I got an allowance, but my allowance had to be spent on doing a service project.
Oh.
And it wasn't even just that. It was having to do research into a community organization and figure out something that I could make to give that might help.
Yeah.
So care kits for Project Smile or painting suitcases for a domestic violence shelter.
How old were you when you were doing this?
I don't know, 7 to 10 or something.
Were your peers doing this as well?
No. No.
So, would you go to school and they'd say, well, what did you do this weekend? You say, I painted a suitcase for the...
Yes, I was that kid.
Wow.
I was that kid. But I think, they were really focused on widening my horizons. And I had a lot of opportunities to travel, and I had a lot of I was in Girl Scouts.
Okay, yes.
So there were a lot of ways to learn about other people,
right?
Different cultures, societal issues.
Yes.
And I think all of that both got me curious,
Yeah.
but then also got me thinking about like, what can I do?
Yeah.
How can I be part of this big world that we're in? And then you mentioned
Yeah.
the natural world, kind
Yeah.
of like two
you
sides.
like to explore the woods, and you actually like to, nature was something that you gravitated to.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I think like the inner workings and the
Yeah.
kind of puzzle pieces of our internal
Yeah.
space. I know you're familiar with my work probably.
Yeah. But for folks who may not know, I mean, your work is so layered, and that visual element to it, just putting it together, I think for folks almost to be able to have like a 3D effect in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I make cut paper
Yeah.
pieces. I do a lot of different things, but for cut paper, I was very interested in working big.
Yeah.
I'm a tinier person, and I think, I wanted to do installations and this big work, but I wanted to do things that I could do by myself,
Yeah.
and not need like a crew. So a lot of that came through in paper, and that's really when I started exploring
Yeah.
internal systems and organisms, and then making these like layered sculptural pieces.
That is fascinating to me. Did you have any artists that you aspired to be like, or served as like a muse or inspiration during that time?
So many.
Wow.
I would go to museums constantly. Like I basically lived at the Clark Art Museum.
Yeah.
And there's all these great stories of my parents literally dragging me out crying because I just wanted to spend more time.
Oh.
So I fell in love with
Yeah.
so many artists,
Yeah.
and they were, rock stars to me.
So interested. I mean, I think that when we're kids, we get our inspiration from so many different sources. And I think that for you, I mean, knowing that the museums were your home, like you loved that, it just, your imagination was filled with so many things, which is really important, because I think as we look now, like kids today, their imagination, I mean, it's definitely something that I would say there are many sources that try to fill it. Right. We think social media, we think all these other things, and nothing like good old fashioned going outside, playing, exploring. You found like an animal skull at one point or something, and tell me about that.
I found a little like muskrat skull, or maybe it was a squirrel skull, on our lawn. And it was totally clean.
I was going to say,
it looked like something you might buy in the store. And I saw that as like, that's something I also saw in museums and natural history museums. But it was like a treasure.
Oh.
And I think another kind of part of that was I was so upset by like roadkill, or anything that had to do with like cruelty to animals. But I think like this was a way to kind of like memorialize that and appreciate it.
Did you take it inside and keep it?
Sure did, and now I have a whole collection.
Oh. Okay.
which is actually a teaching tool. So I collect them and I clean them, and that's very side part of me, but I actually use them in the art room. So like I'll bring in the big cow skull and have kids guess what it is, and it's often a dinosaur.
That, you know what I mean, a cow skull. Where'd you get one of those?
That was from Woven Roots Farm. The Salinettis actually invited me over after coming to one of my shows and seeing my interest, and they had just bought Woven Roots Farm over in Tyringham, and it was on the property.
In terms of things you can find on a farm, that's on the list, folks. A cow skull too. That's right.
But yeah, having kids draw from the cow skull and different skulls and learn about the natural world is a passion of mine.
I mean, I think the blend, right, of both worlds, right, the science and the art. I mean, now there's a name. I mean, people call it STEAM, right? So science, technology, engineering, art, and math, right? And so that people understand that there is this invaluable connection between all these different elements because it works both sides of your brain.
Right. And I'm the daughter of a author. My mom's an author, and she writes books kind of based in science, and has a biology degree.
Okay.
So there's that passion. And
there you go.
My dad's an engineer. and generations of engineers above him. So I think like the
It's kind of bound to
inner workings
happen, Lucie. Yeah. It's almost like, well, let's see what happens when bio and engineer comes together. Right. They produce a Lucie.
An artist.
Right, an artist. Well, all right. So tell me about you're doing your imagination is on fire. You're going to museums throughout the Berkshires. You're really having this magical childhood. And then in 1991, you attended the Berkshire Art Center, which at the time was IS 183.
It was, so here's the history throwback. So it was 1997.
Okay.
I was 1 in 1991.
Oh, well, okay. Thank you.
1997, but so not right when it opened, but we did open then. But it was actually called Interlaken School of Art at that time.
All right, okay.
And honestly, I actually lost touch with it for a number of years because I didn't know it changed its name.
Oh, okay.
And then later learned like, oh, that's that wonderful place that I went to.
So tell me about your time there. So you were still like a little kid.
Yes.
So when you went, what was it like for you?
It was magical. You used exactly the right word. It was a place that, I mean, just walking onto the grounds, if you've been there, it's this massive, it's not Victorian style, but for people, it looks like it's a Victorian building. It's bright yellow, just kind of like a castle in the middle of the woods. And in a residential area in Stockbridge. But it was a place filled with other kids like me who just loved art. And I liked being active. You know, I just definitely wasn't a sports kid, but I enjoyed all of that too. But this was camp where I got to just make art all day and even at lunchtime.
So you found your people.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I just very distinctly remember like every single moment was filled with references to art. So like lunchtime we played sculpture tag. Like everything was infused with art.
Wow. All right. So then so after art camp, you said that there was kind of like a break at some point. Okay. Yeah. And then what did you do in the interim? Did you continue like associations with like art organizations, or how did that go?
Yeah, I was really lucky. My parents actually I had like a kind of group, not homeschool, but like a private tutor thing. I was going to public school, but it was like a thing I would go to with a local artist. And I think a lot of these like different pieces, we're also really good friends with an illustrator that lives in Chatham, and I would go to their house and constantly see these real life artists in action. And I was always making. I had very, very lucky to have excellent teachers all through school that always encouraged me, but also like always encouraged uniqueness. Never, ever, ever cookie cutter projects in any of my my art classroom experiences.
So when you say that, what does that translate to in terms of, would they say, all right, Lucie, we give you sort of free rein to do whatever? Like, how did that work?
There was structure, definitely, but it was like, let's look at this artist and what can you do? And, I think maybe sometimes the projects would be very structured and maybe I would go off a little bit and make my own thing.
And it was okay.
That was celebrated. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of feel like with art, it has to sort of have that fluid nature to it, right? Because it's art and it's subjective, and it's really from the person creating, and you put something out there because it's coming from you. Art is so personal. It's so personal. So you're doing all this great work and you're enjoying it and it's a passion. When did you know that you wanted to turn this passion into your life's work?
Oh boy. Yeah. Well, so I went to Mount Holyoke and I like in my senior year of high school, I was really falling in love with art history. Like I think before that point, I didn't really know that it could be a career or something that you studied. It was just like, sure, that's what I see in museums and I really love. But I just didn't think of it as like a broad thing that I could keep doing.
Right.
And I remember sitting in my high school senior room with Jude Harrigan, whose daughter went to Mount Holyoke. And that's kind of that connection too. And we learned about Hieronymus Bosch. And it was the conversation was so exciting. And so I fell in love with art history and realizing that could be something that I later studied.
Okay.
And I think, because I've done some reflection on this recently, and I actually was applying to be a journalist. So funny.
Interesting.
That was what I thought I was going to do, I guess. I barely remember this. And I don't know when it exactly shifted, and I'm assuming it was in my college art history classes.
Oh, wow.
I was waking up at 8 a.m., out the door, so excited to get to my art history class and sit there and look at slides, and it was just incredible. And I in college, I coupled that. So I was an art history major with an education minor. And they don't let you double minor, but I did technically double minor in art studio. So I was living in these kind of three worlds of the very academic art history, art studio, and keeping up with my creativity and creating group shows of my peers in college and all that. But then also education and learning how to take those things that I love and translate them for others.
Well, I mean, I think it's almost like it provided that sturdy foundation, right? Because I think sometimes we've all heard like some of the the thoughts of like, what are you going to be if you're an artist? You're going to starve. You're not going to be able to, the starving artist, trope is one that is out there because sometimes people think, well, what kind of career can you have? Will you be always on that side of like wanting to whatever, get to that level? And you obviously, you're there. I mean, but your journey to this point has been one that has filled you with so many experiences. So I want to, I know that you have the Mount Holyoke experience. You curated a lot of shows when you're at Mount Holyoke too. So you did your thing.
Yep.
Was there like one show that stood out to you?
I did one that was in the 5 colleges that was themed around music lyrics.
Okay.
So it's called Don't Pass Me By, which is a Beatles song.
Yep.
And everybody was challenged to create a new piece of work that was inspired by song lyrics. And it was just a great show.
All right. So with something like that, I'm always curious about like the thought process for like, you're a curator, you're an artist. How did the idea come to be?
Well, at Mount Holyoke specifically, we had a kind of like a student space that anything could happen in. They would use it for clubs and different things, and I would apply to do these like group shows and with artists from the 5 colleges. And I think really what it came down to was getting a community of artists together.
Okay,
sounds familiar. But getting a community of artists together, giving them a little spark of inspiration, because I know how hard it is sometimes to just like sit down and get to the grind and make a piece of work out of nothing. It's really great to have a prompt, right? And then have a deadline to have a show.
Right.
So this gave people those opportunities and then brought them together for a celebration.
Okay. How many shows, I mean, and you might not even remember the amount, but would you say you curated like several shows during your time at Mount Holyoke?
It was like one a year. And then I was also interning in the art history, in the art museum at Mount Holyoke. So I was part of a couple shows there. And then after that, was it when I was interning? No. My first year working full time at IS 183, then Berkshire Art Center. I was working on our faculty shows.
So let's talk about that return to sort of this place that really was foundational in your experience. Was it easy for you because you had this prior affiliation with them to be able to come back and say, I'm here, I'd really love to be a part of the professional side of things? I mean, I guess you're like almost a part of that community, that family.
Yeah. And I was looking for an internship, of course. So this was 2009, so the summer after my first year of college. And I had been working. I was really lucky to be able to see a lot of career possibilities. And envision different things I could possibly do. Future selves, right, if you think about psychology. And I was trying out a lot of different things. So one thing I thought to try out was the nonprofit world. I was definitely interested in art education. And was pursuing my degree in visual arts education. And yeah, I mean, I applied and was interviewed, and spent my first summer there. And it was just 2 weeks of being a teaching assistant, and I fell head over heels. I mean, it was, again, I was back at art camp. I was working with a professional artist, again, who's rock stars to me, and getting to see kids be inspired by this artist, by other artists, by themselves.
I can only imagine how that moment felt, because here you were once a kid, going back to 1997, not 1991 when you were a baby. but when you were a kid, right? And, just during that time, it's almost like, again, when we think about that full circle moment, right? The circle is not quite complete yet, but here that circle is building and it's growing. You're back at a place teaching where you once were the student. What was that like for you, just to be in that position?
Yeah, I just wanted to be part of it more.
Wow.
I mean, obviously, I did the 2 weeks, and then was like, sign me up for next summer, please. Let me come back.
Yeah. And did you?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
I did. And actually, I can't remember if it was that summer or the summer after, but then I returned as the camp coordinator. So then I was there all summer, and working with the faculty artists and kind of in more of an administrative role. So less of, in the classroom, but I got to see, a lot of different sides.
Probably like how the sausage is made from a different perspective, because too, it's like even in the creative world, the business has to still run, right? And so we all can't just be doing art or else the business will fall apart. So you almost need to be able to have that perspective, and you got that. So you continued your affiliation with the Berkshire Arts Center, continued to grow.
Yes.
And you went on to goodness, you were the associate program director. Yeah. When did that come about?
I held a lot of titles. So let's see. I was actually working not very, very, very part-time during college.
Okay.
And Hope Sullivan, who's the director at that time, I don't want to say took a chance on me because I can downplay myself, but
someone who gives you your brave.
Yes, and she was very very interested in everything I was doing in school, and I even wrote some papers about my experience at Berkshire Arts Center, and I started to. I think we started to kind of work together on curriculum. Okay. And that was my first job title in 2012, was coordinator of curriculum development. So that was working on our Learning Through Arts program, our after-school program in the public schools, and working to write more lessons for that curriculum, work on teacher training and taking the perspective and information I learned from pre-practicum and practicum teaching.
This is so interesting to me, and here's why: because it's like you're an artist, but then you have to put on sort of like this educator hat. What was that like, right? Because it's such it's a world that you were prepared for. It's a world that you obviously have the training for, but you also have this constant, I would say, desire to produce and create. Yeah. Did that shine through in how you produce the curriculum?
Absolutely. Okay. I mean, when you're writing a curriculum, you should be, creating project samples and thinking about all the different modifications, how will each very different student respond to this, and how can we make it the most accessible and the most engaging? So I think, I took a lot of lessons and ideas from my childhood growing up, thinking about how to connect science, because those were the tenets of our Learning Through Arts program. It was looking at academic subjects through the visual arts lens. And we just talked about it, everything that I love. Right. So I was like, how can we make, this biology subject, like creating a geode formation in geology. How can we make that interesting through making felted geodes?
Now, fascinating to me. Now, with the learning through the arts program, is that something that throughout Berkshire County, specific cities and towns, or?
Yeah, we're across the county. So we're in, I think it's about 10 schools right now.
Okay.
And it ranges throughout the years. But we're predominantly in Pittsfield.
Okay.
We're at Conti, Crosby, Morningside, and then right now we're doing a program for Herberg and Reed that's at our new space.
Okay. Yep.
And Pittsfield High School and Taconic High School students. But we're at Richmond Consolidated School and Craneville and Undermountain.
You know, I'm so glad to hear that. And, you know, the thing is that when we think about when budgets have to be cut, the first thing that we know oftentimes it's like art and music. And, you know, I go back to my childhood and I remember just like we had robust music classes, we had art. And I think these are spaces in which you get to just create. It's not rigid, right? There is no test, no exam. I mean, I'm sure that if there's like certain structured things you have to do, there's like technique. But for the most part, this is a space where you get to be creative. And we need that. Yes. Students need that.
Unbridled creativity and play. Yes.
So I'm so glad to hear that this program has been just a key part of our local education. So that's really good. I want to know. I mean, Lucie, your roles within the Berkshire Arts Center have run the gamut. I mean, you probably have a whole list of titles that you can look into. When we think about everything that you've done, what have been some of the insights that you have gleaned from that time? Because here you are now. You are the executive director of the Berkshire Arts Center. So now we have closed that circle. I mean, I don't know of anyone who has had such a story as yours. I mean, where you have got to see the workings of the business from the ground up, even as a student, as a child, and then you're the executive director. That's a story that isn't often available because it's not the reality for many people, but it is yours. What did you gain from your time?
I mean, we often hear in the nonprofits, right? You wear many hats.
Yeah.
So in addition to, you know, all those years and all those titles, like within those titles and those specific projects, I was still wearing a lot of hats. I mean, Hope had me working on grants and managing our project budget for like pretty early on. And I think all of those opportunities definitely prepared me for like logistically for this job now. But I think the greater perspective of understanding everybody where they're at. You know, I do understand the intern experience. I understand how that can improve and the faculty experience and how that can improve. And I'm kind of always on this constant string of how can things just be better and better and better. But being able to understand and appreciate each of those different roles and the work that goes into it. I mean,
it's truly unique insights because, I mean, you literally, when someone says, you don't understand, you're like, yeah, actually I do. I've been there.
I mean, not always.
Right. but I mean,
part.
you've been able to see it. You have this really comprehensive perspective that not everyone gets a chance to have. And so I can only imagine that it enriches the daily work and how your vision for the organization. You know, for my listeners just tuning in, my guest today is Lucie Castaldo, Executive Director of the Berkshire Arts Center. And so we're just talking a little bit about her great career with the Berkshire Arts Center, which actually has spanned many years and many titles. And so, you know, Lucie, you are in a leadership position, but you're also a practicing artist. You continue to show your work. I'm curious as to how you see yourself in your head.
It's such a good question, Roberta. I think the answer is I don't really know. Okay. Perhaps I'm a creative that's looking to spread creativity.
Okay.
I think it's really hard. I just find labels hard. It's hard to identify as an artist because I'm not fully there.
Right.
And it's you know always hard, you know, maybe for women to identify as a leader.
When you say you're not fully there, hold on. Does that mean that you have like a vision for yourself, like as an artist, of like what you think of as like the pinnacle? of success. Is that it?
Right.
I don't know.
I think there's some imposter syndrome here. So
Don't we all have it though?
Yeah.
We all have it.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, we do.
Yeah, but I guess what I mean to say is that, I'm not constantly making at this stage in my career, and I'm not constantly showing, but I am living my creativity in every day. I mean, whether it's making our Halloween decorations for our front porch, or painting the picture frames that are hanging in our new space in Pittsfield. I mean, the amazing thing about this position is it is constantly many hats, and they do span from like the very, very hands-on to, more.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know. No, I know. I mean, you have to like sort of do everything a little bit because it's the nature of a nonprofit too. It's like sort of all hands on deck kind of thing. Right. Well, I mean, it seems to me, if I'm unpacking a little bit what you're saying, that, you're in this great position, but probably that artist is probably like poking out. It's like, hey, I want to have a show soon.
Yeah. And I do get to do some of that through our programs at Berkshire Art Center. So, for example, we just had, last May now, we were part of World Collage Day.
Okay.
Which I planned with Brielle Rosati, our program director, and Karen Arp Sandell, who is a fabulous local collage artist, and my first teacher at Berkshire Art Center when I was in camp.
There you go. Nice shout out.
Yeah. And that's a day we actually did a collage marathon. So it gathered a bunch of artists together to all just sit and make and kind of have that, again, like unbridled art making experience.
And was it like mixed media kind of collages, or just whatever?
Yeah, most everybody worked from magazines. I'm trying to think if anyone didn't, but it was like a lot of bringing in ephemera and different things from home.
What's
and also,
that?
Oh, like little maybe like a little tag from a tea bag or a special vintage stamp.
Oh,
different things. Artists were always collecting.
It takes me back. Like, as I hear the word collage, it takes me back to my art class where we'd get like construction paper and then we'd have to like cut out images and like glue it. And they would say, make a collage of whatever. And I think that was the extent to our collages. I don't think it got really as fancy as bringing in like the nice little things from home. But
well, sometimes you don't have those things at home. But a lot of these artists definitely did. But then we had a lot at the school. Okay. And that's, I think, a massive help to creating. We have just like, from like old encyclopedias and old books.
And for people can use all of them.
Yes. Yep.
All right. So like on, thinking of that, I think this is a perfect way to get into on the Berkshire Art Center's website. Yeah. There is a simple statement and it says, art is for everyone.
Yes, indeed.
Now, I recall that in a past article, you had said art is for everyone. So what is your connection to this statement? Because it's simple, but it's powerful.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of talking about my roots and my backstory, right? And for me, I never, ever once questioned that art was not for me or I could not be an artist. That was just assumed.
Right.
And I could perhaps even strive to be in a museum. That was just never a question. And I think part of that, too, was being surrounded by real life working artists and getting to see that possible future self.
Right. You had that encouragement, that nurturing.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, my opinion is that creativity and, making art and making something with your own hands is an essential human need.
Yeah.
And it just is something that's at the core of all of us. I mean, we've been doing cave painting since, quite a while now.
That's right. That's right. I mean, you're right. We've always made.
Yes.
It's a part of who we are, and some, I think sometimes as we, delve more into technology, it sort of, it takes away a little bit from the things that we normally do, like our handwritten notes and letters to each other, right?
Right.
Something as simple as that really, it's so easy to type something out, but there's a magic in actually writing. a card or a note.
Yes.
There's something about that. So you're absolutely right. The art of making whatever that is, it stokes something
Yeah.
in the brain.
Yeah. And there's a magic in making it, and there's a magic in receiving
Yes.
it.
Yes.
And a pride and esteem.
Yes.
That kind of come with all of that. And those were all, like, that's the major tenets on why Interlaken School of Art, now Berkshire Art Center, was founded. It was meant to be a space where everyone of all skill levels, all ages, could come, find their art, and create in community.
So let's talk a little bit about, that concept of art is for everyone and the accessibility. Accessibility, is huge to you. Tell me what influence or situation or moment really made it clear to you that while you may have had this experience where art was clearly nurtured and encouraged, that it wasn't necessarily the experience of others.
Yeah. There's been a lot of moments, and I think this is something that I've noticed. Again, maybe the only child, or I was always an observer.
Yeah.
So, and I was always kind of thinking about putting myself in other people's shoes and kind of thinking about that experience and why I'm so lucky. But I think a big foundational moment was in student teaching, and one of the schools that I was in near my college. It was just clear, like, I felt like the art class was just like ripped of all joy. And I was like watching these kids, and they weren't being recognized for individuality. It was very focused on like structure and making, like,
in art.
Yes. And like making the perfect pumpkin. And then I see the art teacher like ripping their work off the wall that she had stapled up. And it was just like, oh my God, this is not only happening here.
Wow.
And, I mean, this was in the 2000s.
How old were these kids?
Elementary school.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's soul crushing.
It is. And I'm very happy to say, like, that's not the experience I see in our Pittsfield public schools. Because I know a lot of those teachers well, and we're in their classrooms doing our programs. And I think, like, where we come in is like trying to fit into what is actually a really great art program that's happening on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, I know that both like the making, the ability to have that unbridled play, that's not happening for everyone.
Right.
And then just the accessibility to get to a museum, enjoy the museum,
Right.
Have some context around it, and like a really good museum education program. And then to see artists who look like you and who can be your possible future.
So you recognize all these things, Lucie? So wow, that's really, I mean, because sometimes it takes a while for insights that deep to come about, but you recognize that, and it became a part of you.
Yeah.
I know one of the things that, and we've had conversations too about like the Berkshire Art Center and its location in Stockbridge, and how that for some members of the Berkshire County community, it might have been a place that was maybe off the beaten path to get there.
Yeah, it's not on a bus route.
No.
And I mean, it's not hard. It's not hard to find.
No, not hard to find. But
if you
have
don't
to have
know.
if you don't know that it's there, because it's tucked away on this nice little sweet road. But if you don't know it's there, then you can easily drive past it. And I think the obviously the work that they're doing is phenomenal. But again, it's sometimes if you know, then you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's even more reason why the Pittsfield location is so awesome, because it is, I think, one, bringing to light the awesome work of the Berkshire Art Center, but it's going to introduce it to new audiences.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about, first of all, there's so much happening here, and we've been referring to it as the Berkshire Art Center throughout the conversation, but I would be remiss before we get into the Pittsfield location to not even talk about the big undertaking of the season, of the summer, which was the renaming of this organization. That was huge.
It was huge.
Because everyone knew it as IS 183.
Yeah, it was a huge decision, and as huge as it was, it was matched in its broadness in the energy and time that went into officially making it.
Wow.
And you were kind of part of that through the ILC.
That's right. I mean, it was, the inclusive leadership cohort, which was created by Bridge. So what an undertaking. What an undertaking. I can only imagine, because here you are reckoning with years of a brand and a name.
Right.
And you have a name that everyone has reached consensus on for the most part. And it's like, we're going to go with this. How is it like logistically wise when you're trying to now move towards this direction? I mean, obviously you see the former name in a lot of old things and communications and marketing collateral and stuff like that.
Right.
So it's almost like, are you in this space right now where you have your new name, but you're still like formally known as...
Oh, for sure. And I think that's going to last for a year, maybe even two. I mean, we had such a robust history behind us. And then behind that as Interlake and School of Art. So, I mean, that brand obviously was built up and, really intentionally thought about. So we have to match that with the new brand and how we're rolling it out. And I think, of course, the Pittsfield space is a massive help to that. Initiative, because we have a great sign and we're right on North Street, and
it's going to be
getting us out there.
It's going to be interesting, Lucy, because you're going to have segments of the population who know it in different ways. There's going to be like the folks in Pittsfield who only know it probably as Berkshire Arts Center because that's going to be their introduction to it. Then you're going to have folks who knew it as IS 183, and then you have folks who say, well, I remember when it was the Interlake in school, right? That kind of thing. So you have all these perspectives that are blending in. But what I love about the Berkshire Arts Center is it's a clean name that speaks to exactly who you are and what you do and what you offer. We are the Berkshire Arts Center. Boom. There you go.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, and that quite literally was the feedback that we received. We did a number of focus groups, and the work for this actually started in the capacity building program through Berkshire Taconic, which to us at Berkshire Arts Center was kind of like part one of the inclusive leadership cohort. And we, at that time, were doing a lot of unpacking and analyzing of what is our mission, what is our purpose,
it's okay. Listen, this is the beauty. The beauty of conversations is sometimes we have the thought that goes through our mind, and then the thought goes, and then we're like, oh, it was there.
Trying to remember what the initial question was.
And then it's gone. But guess what? That's the beauty of conversations, and it's okay. So we're talking a little bit about just everyone, just the name and the everyone coming together, but also the capacity work that happened to help get to this point where it actually became a reality. There was the Berkshire Taconic Foundation. You said there were some groups that were like that group work that was happening to get to this. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so we did some initial work that was more based in kind of gaining community feedback in a broader sense. So not like specific focus groups. It was more like surveys at different programs. Our Art Town, which was in Pittsfield on North Street, that was a giant life-size coloring book that you could walk into. And at that, we had a lot of community conversations. So we're gleaning all this information. And some of it was, who are you? What is IS 183? We've never heard of it. And that it spoke volumes to, our Pittsfield population.
I think I told you this before because I'm from New York City. Anytime I thought of like IS 183, I thought of like intermediate school because that's what they call it in the city. So I was like, is it a school?
Right. And that was intentional. The kind of like reference
Yeah.
back to PS21 and I think like community school, public school. But yeah, then we did a number of focus groups in part 2, the inclusive leadership cohort, and the number one feedback, because we knew we were going into it saying like we think we have to change our name. Like
Right.
we've gotten this feedback now for like 3 years of focused work, and now we are at this point where we think that's the answer. What do you all think? And if we are going to change our name, what should it be? And the number one feedback was it needs to say who you are. And I think our past name is so unique, and that also says a lot about our identity.
How do you honor that? If I could ask about that, how do you honor the names that came before with this new focus? How does that look like in your narrative?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to let anything go and make any changes. Really, it's kind of crippling, but. Ultimately, we're not changing. We're not changing our identity. If anything, we're helping our community know more clearly what that is. And I shouldn't say just a school. It's not only education that we're focused on. We're also focused on our advocacy. And in order to even do education and these magical programs that we do, we need to have artists. And then that means our artists need to be thriving in Berkshire County. So it's always been in our vision statement, list of bullets of, why we exist as an organization, that we should be advocating for local artists and providing artist resources, different art events like artist talks, exhibiting artists. I mean, all of those things need a different word than school.
Yeah, because it's so much bigger.
Yeah.
And I think school keeps it confined, right, into this little space. And everything that you're describing is so broad and so big. I love it. And so now we have Berkshire Art Center, right? And so we have it in Pittsfield, and a new generation of folks are going to be introduced to the wonderful offerings. I actually had the opportunity to go on the website and look and see what the Pittsfield location had to offer. And I was like, wow, this is great. I mean, it really runs the gamut of just offering things like there's like bead making, I think. There was like pottery and different. And then you even have like drop-ins for families. So what's that going to be about? Like the family drop-ins?
We're so excited about this. So we're offering a free, and we don't quite want to see families because it really is open to everybody.
Everyone, okay.
All ages, multi-generational, multi-skill level, all of that. And I'm proud to say that our very first one was exactly filled with some families, some folks that we're meeting now from ServiceNet right downstairs, young people, older people, everybody. And that's fantastic. And as was our opening with everybody sitting down and making art together.
Nice.
But yeah, so we're offering those twice a month. They are free. They are drop-in. And there's a different project, like kind of prompt per session. And that prompt is really open-ended. So it really goes back to a lot of what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
It's not meant to be this structured cookie cutter, you have to do this specific thing. But it does have enough structure that anybody can jump in.
Okay. So like literally anytime you go to one of these drop-in sessions, you're in for a treat. Because you never know what you're going to get.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah. The first one was making fall wreaths.
Okay.
And the outcomes of that ranged from like very intricate patterned wreath designs made out of like natural leaves, and to like energetic scribbles on construction paper.
Okay.
It all happened.
Okay.
But it was all one kind of overall prompt that everyone could.
And so
form
once
community over.
everyone does their project, is it like, okay, you've done it? I mean, do you take it home? Does it hang on a wall somewhere? Where does it go?
These are take-home projects.
Okay.
We did, though, and I'm sure we will do things like this again, our opening event, everybody made a representation of themselves as a home or a building.
Okay.
To kind of represent our community.
Okay.
I have to say, Brielle, our program director, came up with that prompt, and it really garnered a lot of responses.
Okay.
And some really introspective homes, which is amazing. But those are actually going to be a mural that will stay in our Pittsfield location.
Very nice. Yeah. All right. So, I mean, tons of great things happening at the Berkshire Arts Center. What's the feedback been so far? I mean, I know it's been relatively almost, because you celebrated your grand opening on the 28th. What's it?
30th.
The 30th?
Yeah.
Okay, 30th. So, I mean, it was literally it's still fresh.
Yes. The feedback's been very warm, specifically in Pittsfield. Mm-hmm. We've, walked around, introduced ourselves to all our new neighbors, and I'm overjoyed to say that it's been an incredibly warm reception. It's been like, oh my gosh, this is great for Pittsfield. This is great for me. I can't wait to come over.
Well, it's I got to tell you,
how can we be involved too?
I mean, having an art center that offers classes is so important. I mean, it's so important. I remember, for us growing up, we were more arts kids too. So we went to the Harlem School of the Arts. And so they had everything there. I mean, whether it was music, dance lessons, art, you name it. It was a place where just art thrived. So I feel like every community should have a place where people can go and nurture that aspect. And I love the fact that it's right on North Street. It's accessible. So that's a place people can get to. They don't have to wonder if they're driving on a nice little sweet road down South County, oh, is that it? We missed it. Turn around. It's right there, right? North Street is right there. So I'm hoping that people will continue to avail themselves of this awesome resource. For those listeners just tuning in, my guest today is Lucie Castaldo, Executive Director of the Berkshire Arts Center. And Lucie, I keep telling you, if I am not pronouncing your name right, you got to let me know.
Yeah, Lucie Castaldo.
All right. Yes. All right. So, we talked a little bit about the ILC, and I think we just kind of mentioned it in our conversation, but for those listeners and for folks who may not know, so the Idea Institute's inclusive leadership cohort was we participated in the inaugural group, and it's basically a gathering of individuals who represent organizations and institutions across Berkshire County with the sole purpose of raising awareness and perspectives around the concepts of inclusiveness, diversity, equity, and access, and accessibility, I should say. And so, we were together for a year?
Yeah.
A year. And we had a cohort going within the group. So we were a part of a sub cohort, and we got to talk about issues pertaining to accessibility and things of that nature. For you, Lucie, as a leader in this community, were there things that obviously you're doing the work, of course, of the Berkshire Arts Center, and there were things that were happening tangential to this, but were there other things that you took away from this experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think this was a really revolutionary program.
Yeah.
Gwendolyn Hampton Van Sant and Ashante Renee, who are co-facilitators, are brilliant women. And I think they really spearheaded an awakening in the county. They challenged Berkshire County leaders to reconsider how we're leading and what it means to be a leader. Right. And I think for I think probably many in the group, but for us specifically, a lot of those takeaways were to slow down, to be intentional, to listen, to accept making mistakes. Ooh, how uncomfortable.
Oh, we had a lot of uncomfortable moments, didn't we?
Right? And, I think we talked a lot about organizations being on fast-moving trains.
Right.
And just going because, we're all full of passion and we have to keep that train moving.
Right.
But I mean, that's certainly something I found myself on. I jumped onto this train that was running for 30 years with all of this really positive momentum behind it.
Yeah.
And it's hard to slow that down. I think COVID obviously had something to do with that, kind of forced the slowdown.
Yeah, for all of us, yeah.
Yeah, the timing was really interesting with that and ILC.
So much was happening during that time. I mean, it was a heavy time during certain moments of our gathering. But you're right on with the takeaways. Definitely, one of the things I recall too is just making sure that the people who are most affected are brought into the conversation and not at the tail end.
Yep.
Don't make the decision for them and then tell them.
Right.
Bring them in.
Right.
Bring them in and get their feedback, because they're the ones who will be most impacted by whatever that decision is, or that initiative is, or that project. And I think it basically turns the table upside down, because I think the model of leadership sometimes has been sort of top down, right? And then we decide, and then we tell you what to do, and that's it. And it's like, hold on, let's figure out, who's affected by this? How can we bring them in? And we had such a great cross section of people in our cohort. I mean, so I feel like the expectation is that I expect to see change. I expect to see how this will, impact these organizations. And obviously, with the Berkshire Arts Center, I mean, there was work underway, but I can see how that has enriched, the work that you're doing. So, I look forward to seeing how that work progresses, and the folks who will be a part of the new cohort whenever that starts. I see our time is winding down, but I have a few more questions in my head for you. Yeah. Who or what inspires you, Lucie?
Oh boy. Okay, I'll be corny, and I'm going to say I'm going to say my staff and our faculty.
Okay, that's not corny. It's not
We're
corny.
very job related here. I've mentioned many times now that, artists to me are rock stars.
Yeah.
I really genuinely mean that. I think it's like the coolest thing that I get to
it is
work
pretty cool.
with all of these professional artists.
Yeah.
But also people who are so dedicated. And I get to see that every day, both in our administrative team and our faculty artists, and then students who are really dedicated to, trying something new, stepping out of their comfort zone. So I guess the who or what is really ultimately the dedication that I'm seeing in our community.
Okay, that's a good one. Listen, it's whatever you want it to be. I tell my guests, I say, there's no wrong or right answer. It's what nurtures you. So if that's what nurtures you, so be it. And if you had to choose one word to describe you, what would it be?
It'd be 2 words.
Okay, there we go. 2 words.
It'd be eternal optimist.
Okay.
Definitely.
We need to have optimism. Absolutely. And I think that it drives us. So, yes, continue to carry on with that optimism. Obviously, it's taken you far. You have a career that only few could dream of. You've been able to see the ins and the outs. And here you are being able to actually execute a vision based off all these years of experience. How awesome is that, Lucie?
It is awesome. We have a really clear North Star.
Yes.
And one that I'm really passionate about, so it's an easy one to follow.
I wish you all the best. I expect good things from the Berkshire Arts Center. Its location in Pittsfield. I plan to check it out. And I hope you listeners, check it out as well. So I just want to thank you, Lucie, for joining us today, because you were awesome. Lots happening. And I hope folks, if they want to learn more about the Berkshire Arts Center, where should they go?
They should go to berkshireartscenter.org.
All right, perfect.
Or come visit us.
That's an easy one, all right? That's an easy one. So, and you are in the Brothership Building on North Street.
Yep.
All right, folks, you've been listening to Backstory. Let's hear it on WTBR-FM Pittsfield with Roberta McCulloch-Dews of the Mayor's Office in the city of Pittsfield. Thanks for listening, everyone, and have a great day.